Hello and welcome to the final topic in this video series. We're going to be talking about regulation. So far we've talked about the social, cyber and financial vulnerabilities that exist and that possibly threaten the security of the cryptocurrency space, but now we're going to talk and focus more on the regulatory side of things. At the moment there is guidance, rough guidance on how to conduct yourself in the cryptocurrency space. There's terms of service and there's a privacy policy usually when interacting with decentralized finance applications, and there are also tax effects that you need to take into consideration. But apart from that, that's about it. So let's have a look at what is currently being pursued in this space when it comes to regulatory compliance. In more recent years, we've been seeing more legal fronts being mounted, legal attacks being mounted against decentralized finance applications. For example, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission basically said that this particular decentralized autonomous organization, which was a smart contract-based protocol for margin trading, was operating illegally in the US because they didn't register to operate in a designated contract market, and they are engaging in activities only registered futures commission personnel could perform, and they are also not performing know your customer requirements. As well as this, the Security and Exchange Commission has been investigating Coinbase employees who were running an insider trading scheme by classifying certain tokens that were traded just before they were listed on the platform, before they were sold, as securities, because technically they fit the definition. And in another recent court case against a completely different matter, the Security and Exchange Commission laid the claim that because a majority of the nodes of the Ethereum network exist in the US, that Ethereum falls under US jurisdiction, which, as we've been talking about previous topics, the whole point of cryptocurrency is to be decentralized, that no one person controls it. It's the collective that manages it and the collective that governs it. So these claims, of course, they might be enforced, they might not be enforced, but a senator has introduced the Digital Clarity Act of 2022, which aims to smooth out some of these issues or possibly enforce some of these issues. We'll have to see how that turns out. But I wanted to have a look at what Australia was doing in terms of their progress to regulate cryptocurrency, given its social, cyber, and financial vulnerabilities that currently exist. Now, what has first happened is that a select committee on Australia as a technology and financial centre was assembled, and they convened and they listened to all the submissions, and they came through with some recommendations. Now, I'm going to highlight three of these recommendations. The fourth one being, they need to establish a new organization company structure that is specifically about decentralized autonomous organizations. They also need to, when it comes to mining, as we've said before, mining is computationally expensive, requires a lot of electricity. That's why people were cryptojacking or inserting code secretly via malware into people's computers for them to mine. There's the possibility that there will be a 10% discount if they use renewable energy resources, because, of course, everyone's trying to move to a net zero emission world, and this will allow proof of work consensus blockchains to have a future and a purpose. Now, we also have recommendation 8, which talks about how there should be an investigation conducted into the central bank digital currency space in Australia, i.e. the Reserve Bank of Australia should investigate whether or not they should consider issuing a central bank digital currency. So very exciting times. Now, since then, there hasn't been a lot of progress acting upon these recommendations. A senator from the opposition of the current federal parliament has introduced a private member's bill for digital assets market regulation, and I have read through the draft, and I did find a couple of interesting considerations that had been made. Particularly, they had mentioned that the digital asset exchange would need to focus on cybersecurity, but also that if someone is running a stable coin, that they have to report their holdings, whether it be in Australian currency or in foreign currency, or if they have a problem with liquidity, that they have a tailored plan in place to protect people who are holding that stable coin. So all of this will be extremely useful, if it so passes, to help bring about more comprehensive guidance into the space. The problem is that well, not necessarily a problem, it's more of a different approach that the Albanese government has decided to take, is a token mapping project. So instead of blanket spreading out a regulation bill, they're aiming to first undertake a lot of work and basically classify all the various different types of cryptocurrency tokens on the market, so they can uniquely classify them and understand their use case, which of course is another way to approach this, because then you could tailor the legislation to each particular cryptocurrency in the space. And of course, I didn't highlight this, but that is recommendation number 3. So I suppose they are also following through on this, but they're taking a different approach. We'll have to wait and see what happens there, but it's very exciting stuff. Very exciting that people are starting to consider security in all its forms in the cryptocurrency space. Now, I want to take another approach to legality and talk about sanctions. So over in the US, they have the Office of Foreign Assets Control, and quite recently they cracked down 2 virtual currency mixes. We've talked about them before. They're also known as tumblers, i.e. people take their funds that are within their wallets and they pass it to these platforms, and hopefully that other people do as well, and they then tumble the funds and then receive their funds back. It's meant to obfuscate where the money has come from. However, of course, there are firms exist that can still trace the amounts that pass through these virtual currency mixes. Now, people might use these for legitimate reasons, such as for privacy, but other people might use it to launder their funds. It's a delicate balance, hasn't been quite worked out yet. There's more work to be done in this area. But what ended up happening was, not so much with Blender, which was the Bitcoin one, but with Tornado Cash, which was the Ethereum one, they ended up enforcing and laying down these sanctions. And then, of course, businesses started to apply. So all the blacklisted addresses that had interacted with Tornado Cash started getting enforced by Circle, who were in charge of the US, one of the US stable coins, USDC, GitHub, Infura, and Alchemy, as well as central exchanges such as Coinbase and Kraken. An alleged developer of Tornado Cash has also been arrested in Amsterdam by the Netherlands Fiscal Information and Investigation Service for concealing criminal financial flows and facilitating money laundering. And there may be more kind of these arrests in the future. Other contributors to the GitHub of Tornado Cash have had their accounts banned. After this happened, and it was a bit of an overkill, the Office of Foreign Assets Control ended up releasing new guidance to help people understand what was and wasn't still permissible in this environment. So they said that users who previously interacted with Tornado Cash will have to, if they want to interact with the platform again, they'll have to require a license from the office in order to do so, but they have to provide personal information such as the wallet address, the transaction hashes, the timestamps, and the currency amounts to facilitate this process. The protocol itself is not illegal as it's open source code, so interacting, copying, sharing, citing, teaching, and using the code is possible still as well. Now, down here I've just mentioned that the Ethereum wallets were also subject to dusting attacks. But what is a dusting attack? Well, as we've possibly gathered by listening, thinking deeply about these topics, you might have realized that Ethereum wallets and various other wallets do not just, you can't just pull up the drawbridge and not accept transactions. If someone sends you a transaction, you'll receive it. And as a result, somebody who was using the Tornado Cash platform ended up just sending a lot of famous people, a lot of celebrities, a lot of key figures in the cryptocurrency space, a little bit of ETH from the platform. Does that mean their wallet is sanctioned? What's going on there? Well, hypothetically speaking, in line with other sections, if this does happen to you, you probably need, in order to lay down what has exactly happened, is that you need to file a report with the Office of Foreign Asset Control saying that you've received blocked property. However, I wasn't able to, during my research, find the form, so I'm afraid I cannot link it in the references below. So you will need to do your own research or contact them directly if you believe this to be a problem. Now, there's one other thing that started going a little bit wrong as well, and that is with the maximal extractable value boost relays that we have previously talked about. It turns out the leading boost relay, Flashbots, was not actually processing any Tornado Cash transactions in the network. So essentially, there was a form of soft censorship that was occurring in the Ethereum blockchain as a result of these sanctions, because this particular MEV boost is funded by an American financial firm. So that's something to keep in mind. They state this on their GitHub page, that they're receiving funds to help keep the lights on from them. So it makes sense as to why they would be complying with these sanctions. This is one side of the privacy angle. It's always good to look at, if you are deeply care about your privacy, there are privacy coins that exist that try to obfuscate and hide transactions themselves while still being public, protected by even more cryptographic security protocols. But just remember that even though you're trying to be private citizen, you're trying to keep your coins private, if it's found that you still own custody of these coins, there will be possible tax effects that result with you having this money, because you technically haven't realized anything. You still have control of it, and you'll have to realize it at a future date, and you'll still have to record it on your tax return. So it might be an issue if you misreport it. So just keep that in mind. While we're on data and privacy and sharing, you could go to all this effort to, get these private cryptocurrency coins or obfuscate your transactions using a virtual currency mixer, and then you go to something like this and you want to mint an NFT because it's free. And in order to mint the NFT, you've got to link your social media accounts after you connect your wallet to complete both on-chain, which are things that happen on the blockchain, and off-chain, which is transactions or activities that occur off the blockchain and are not part of or are registered by the blockchain activities. So as you can see here, it's not the case with all of them. I had to dig to find one to relay this point, but you first have to connect your wallet, and then you have to verify both your Twitter account and your Discord. But that means that now you've given this data to the NFT minter. So always make sure, if you're going to do anything like this, to check through the privacy policy before you connect your wallet, because you might not like where that data may end up, as it could be possibly given to third parties. According to this privacy policy, as of recording, it is retained as long as you use the service. So unless you specify that you would like it removed, it will probably remain there forever. And that's what I mean by that, is there'll be always a link between the wallet address you provide and your social media accounts that you use. So I've also linked the privacy policy, so if you want to read it yourself, you can, but it's a small scale privacy issue. And like I said before, not every single NFT that you have to mint will ask you to verify your Twitter and your Discord as part of a marketing campaign to increase DeFi protocols' reach to the mass audiences. Let's talk about a rather larger privacy issue. It's to do with the Celsius Bank. So if you remember back when we were talking about the Luna collapse with the UST and the Luna in the Anchor protocol back in the previous topic, one of the great institutions that did suffer from this was Celsius. They were a cryptocurrency lender that people were banking with all their crypto, and due to market volatility and the Luna collapse and collateral suddenly devaluing, they went bankrupt and had to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, a couple of days before I recorded this, Gizmodo uploaded a 14,532-page document of a court filing which contained the names of individuals and businesses who were conducting business with the platform in the lead up to before the Chapter 11 was filed. And this is more of a regulatory thing because they need to prove who had what and what kind of funds will be protected when they attempt a restructure. Now, on that list, all the individuals have their names attached to the amount of crypto that they had on the platform. Like I've said here, the addresses were fortunately not listed unless you're a business, in which case it was. But it's pretty bad because your deposits, your withdrawals, your interest and reward payments were broken down for each cryptocurrency. And that means that you're possibly vulnerable to getting socially scammed or being identified in a possibly anonymous blockchain system. So, the Internet Archive has taken down the uploaded court filing document because it violated the Internet Archive's terms of service. However, it is still possible to find the original court filing online with minimal effort, and someone, as of recording, has made a website which you can use to look up an individual to see how much they apparently lost to Celsius. Again, they're still working through the Chapter 11 filing, and they're aiming, of course, to try and protect as many of those customer assets as they can because they would like to be able to continue operating their business. Now, as time goes on, the information presented in this document will become less relevant because, they'll be taking a cut to cover the costs of the restructure from all the accounts. Times will change. But the problem is if someone withdrew or deposited from an external wallet the exact amounts of crypto that are on the exchange, because, of course, the Celsius platform actually has custody over the crypto assets, and they're not non-custodial wallets that, of course, allow you to gain control. That means that so long as you went the usual route of fiat to purchasing directly on their platform, it's quite possible that you're safe. And of course, the transactions are not public. However, again, if you transfer from an external wallet, then people can just scour back through the transaction history and tie your name to the amount of cryptocurrency that you deposited. Now, I understand that this information has to be given as part of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings. I had a look at some other Chapter 11 bankruptcy court filings, and they sort of follow the same consistent pattern. They have to name the individual or business involved, and they have to give the amount that they held with the company. But just imagine, of course, if this happened to the banks, if all the banks had to file for Chapter 11 during the GFC, and they gave the same amount of information out. It possibly could have been absolute pandemonium. So it's probably a good idea from the data that I have seen that you might want to restrict yourself to platforms like these because of the market volatility and the lack of consumer protections. You might want to end up setting up maybe a trust or a superannuation account that is not in your name with these platforms. Sure, it has an address, but at least then you are not personally identified if these documents happen to come to light. Food for thought, something to think about. But let's finish off now with central bank digital currencies. And I felt, even though there is other digital currencies coming in, like it already exists, such as the digital yuan and the digital rupee that was announced quite recently, I thought it would be best to focus on, yet again, Australia and see what they're doing in the space. Now, last year, the head of payment at the Reserve Bank of Australia said there wasn't a convincing, strong policy case for central bank digital currencies, as there was existing electronic payment systems that were already providing households and businesses with a wide range of safe and convenient low-cost payment services. However, that hasn't stopped the RBA acting on recommendations to create a pilot program. So what they're going to do in this pilot program is they're going to be in charge of implementing a permissioned private Ethereum chain known as Quorum, which I've given a link to so you can look it up on the website. It's backed by Microsoft Azure, and it's basically an Ethereum chain that they can use. The EORD itself will be an ERC20 token, and they'll be able to, mint, issue, redeem, burn, and authorize it. So that's just something to keep in mind. So on that point, I want to touch on the fact that it's quite possible that if this is pursued, and this is one of the issues that people take with this, is that in order to induce periods of deflation, they could introduce negative interest rates, which means that you're better off using your money, purchasing things with that money instead of trying to save it in the bank. And of course, people, would like their investments to grow and not shrink. But this is a possible vulnerability that might be exploited, say, for the good of the economy, they might tell you. But again, people trust institutions to grow their investments and not shrink their investments. And there's also a case for transaction monitoring, because of course all the transactions, they'll be able to scour them and analyze them and get really into your psyche. Of course, like we've shown up here in this diagram, the only identifying aspect will be actually completed by the use case provider. So they'll have to do the your customer requirements to identify the transactions in the network. And besides, Australia has the new payments processing system already, which effectively does possibly the same thing. I'm not up to date with it and I'm not familiar with it totally, but usual transactions already do this already. However, the RBA has not ruled out completely removing cash from the system. They would still like to support as many different financial services as possible. So that's, again, something else to keep in mind. So what about the future? Now we've talked about all these vulnerabilities that exist in the cryptocurrency space, whether it be phishing, whether it be cyber, whether it be actually having the value attacked, whether it be government regulation. Where is this all going? Well, to be fair, nobody truly knows how this is going to work. I'm personally hoping for universal basic income that can be sourced from a proof of stake central bank digital currency, giving everyone, a share of the income from the transactions of the network. That's what I'm personally hoping for. I don't know if we'll get that. I'm also excited, again, pointing back to the Elon Musk story, about how it might become space currencies. These might be what we use to transact in space through a decentralized network of satellites. Cardano, a blockchain that we haven't talked about in this video presentation, currently rolling out in Ethiopia a tamper-proof education credentials system as part of their self-sovereign identity platform, with help from decentralized identifiers to safeguard everything. It's meant to be a scalable platform. I've given a link to it. You can have a look at it. Have a read of it for yourself. Very interesting. I'm not sure how and if that'll be a viable solution or if it'll work. It's still in its early stages. We'll have to see. But it's all important to be talking about the future and where the potential, where it's going. But it's probably very important to understand that there are security risks when dealing with cryptocurrency, and that is possibly something that needs to be in the forefront of everyone's minds as they think of new and exciting use cases to revolutionize how we transact with one another. So I want to open it up to you now. What do you think we'll need to look out for when using cryptocurrency in the future? What security issues can you perceive to be a problem in the cryptocurrency space, or when using cryptocurrency or applying a blockchain technology to a new task? Interested to hear your thoughts. Thank you for sticking with me as I've gone through this presentation. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to do any more of these videos and post them onto YouTube, but it's been a blast. If you've made it all the way to the end, thank you. Thank you for your attention and your time, and have a good rest of your day. Bye for now.